Greetings, brothers and sisters. So, this is a good video I enjoyed watching. I just sent it to my wife. The reason Kanye West is misunderstood. All of it is interesting because Kanye is just a different dude, right? You know? Um, but here, it starts here, and he talks about those times that he was reprogrammed. Remember, there was a couple of times. One time he said, um, Jay-Z, don't send your... He had like a freak out, or he had a sort of a meltdown at a concert. And he went on a rant about Beyonce and Jay-Z. And he said, Jay-Z, don't send killers at my head, right? Which, I've joked about in various videos. But then, he had he left the concert, and then they put him in a treatment center, and he came out blonde, remember? And then there was another time where he said that slavery is a choice, which he addresses here. And both times they medicated him, labeled him. And he said that his creative abilities were thwarted, right? Like he wasn't able to. Well, let's get to that part right here.
Things. Or it blocked my ability to channel what God wanted me to do.
So he's talking about when they put him on medication, right? When he went to these treatment centers and they put him on a psychiatric hold. Remember all those things. So that happened at least twice while I've been covering Kanye.
But we're all on medication right now. Did you use toothpaste with fluoride today? It blocks your pineal gland.
So, he gets into some truther stuff here and answers a lot of questions about things that, theories that we have in the so-called truth community, right? That we have, there's these theories that are out there, and he addresses some of them. Like he talks about the record industry putting people into debt slavery. And there's that movie that, not a great movie, but an interesting movie called Cadillac Records. We also saw this with Tom Petty's lawsuit, where the record industry would give the artist the, money and loans up front. And the artist would party and display a lifestyle, lavish lifestyle that they hadn't yet earned, and that contributed to their, the rock and roll rap, sort of street cred stuff, pop star, where they're all rich and they, have this exorbitant lifestyle. But it was just on, bonuses or signing bonuses that they got that they had to pay back, right? And they were basically slaves to the record industry after that, right? Because they were living this lifestyle. They got used to this lifestyle, but they didn't make enough money to, they were in debt. They were in, debt to the record label, and then the record label could tell them to do anything, right? Illuminati poses and things. But the way that Kanye describes this, and I want to, morph this into answering a question that I got, a couple of questions that I got from my last 5-hour video on the Journey series, stuff to do with heartfulness, and getting back to this idea of people who are they just have good energy and they uplift you, like people in your life, and then the people that just suck energy from you and take you down. Because I talked about that in my 5-hour video, but I didn't say some things I wanted to say, even though, I make a long video, and oftentimes it leaves more questions than answers, or there are things that are left unsaid. But in this clip, Kanye is talking about mind control in a way that's more realistic than what people in the truth community believe, right? This whole adrenochrome stuff, all this QB stuff, all these things that have come out over, the last whatever period of time, and the exaggeration and the inability to conceptualize and think about how stuff like that would play out in reality, right? So when I call people ghouls and vampires, I don't mean actual ghouls or vampires. I mean on a spiritual level, right? People who suck energy from you, who are lifeless, who are zombies, in not the way that you see in a movie, but in a more realistic way. And that's how all these things work, in a way that's not as sensationalistic as many truthers like to portray. And I used to do it because I believed in it, and then I realized, oh, this is stupid, right? Things that are exaggerated to bring in viewers and, clickbaity stuff. It's not that overt. And I've talked about this in the past. When you have a system where it's an unnatural system. It's a demonic system. It's a controlled system, right? When you have all of those things in place, then the people who run the system and the people who are programmed and enslaved by the system, they all just go along with it. They don't need to have secret meetings. They don't need to have, all the, ritualistic things that we see. I mean, they have those things for reasons. Those rituals do exist. But it isn't like there's these guys who are planning everything and, there's secret plans and all these things. I mean, there is that stuff, but it isn't like people think it is. Because the people are all just going along with what they've been trained to do. The system is now just normal life. And so there doesn't have to be, these nefarious, insidious type of clandestine meetings and things like this, right? It's just, it goes along naturally. Like the guys who are in Skull and Bones, they get a framework of how to think about things. And without having to be instructed on what to do, they all just know what to do. They find some role. They're given some position of power. Sometimes they're oppositional, like George W. Bush and John Kerry were in the same class at Yale, and they were, in Skull and Bones together, but then they ran against each other and were, seemingly enemies in their, running for president. But they were working together, although it appeared that they were, adversarial. And they don't need to communicate. They didn't need to have secret private conversations. You do this and I'll do that. They just know. And just like the programmed, the slaves, they just know what to do, right? You just, you have this natural fear of certain things and natural, connection to certain things. You know what you can say and what you can't say. And then you just go along with it, right? There are these unwritten rules that everybody knows about. So there doesn't need to be all this, nefarious, evil stuff that people think about in the truth community. One of the problems with the truth community is it's growing more in terms of the ratio of people who have or don't have the ability for abstract thought and critical thinking skills. You have more and more dummies coming into the truth community as it has grown over time. And the percentage of, people who can think abstractly and can understand that is, the complexities of, all these narratives and relationships, as opposed to people who are binary, black or white, off or on, Republican or Democrat, right? And there's, those people I don't make videos for, but they keep on showing up, right? A lot of cubies were among those groups. I mean, there are people with abstract thought that get sucked into some of these other movements. But for the most part, the people without abstract thought, they can't do it. They're just not capable. It's not that they're, they just haven't developed this skill yet. I mean, hopefully they can develop the skill. I don't know if they can do it, in this life. I think they can or whatever, but very few people will. And so those people are just sheeple who happen to be in the truth community, and they sort of screw everything up, right? Because they're not capable of rising up to it and seeing, the more complex picture here. But this interview with Kanye, you could see how MK and, the way that they handle these celebrities and these people who have a microphone in front of them, is built into the system. Like it isn't, as nefarious as people in the truth community think it is, many of us, right? Many of the people in the truth community. But it's kind of worse because when you're having a meeting and you're saying things out loud and you're saying this is what we're going to do and this is how we're going to do it, the truth is there. Like you're conscious of what you're doing. But when it becomes automatic, when it's built into the system, then people don't question it. And they have, ways that it's built into the system that anybody questions it is handled or censored or ostracized. And, that's what we deal with. It's not so much some reaction. It's not like the system's reacting, in a way to each situation. It's just that everything's built in to silence truthful voices, silence people asking questions and all the rest of it, right? And the other piece to it is that the system is fueled by, for lack of a better word, evil or demonic energy or something, right? And so that's like another problem because so many people in the truth community want to fix the system and think they can make it pure and make it whole because we're 100% dependent on it. And so we're like, oh, the system's evil, so let's make it not evil, or whatever it is, or part of the system's evil. And so then they have like this idea of the deep state, or they have this idea of, this group or that group is causing the problem. And if we just get rid of those people or that group, the system will be fine. And, the elite or whatever they want to call it, right? But that's not the case. It's an evil system. It's a demonic system. And there's no way to make it good. There's no way to make it align with the divine forces. It goes against that in its fundamental, materialistic, debt-based, economic, immoral, disconnect from God type of system, right? And so there's no way to make the system good, even though there are things in the system we not only are dependent on, but we enjoy or addicted to. And so like that creates another set of problems in terms of people's perception, because most people can't imagine a reality without this system. Like, how would they live? How would you live if the system wasn't there? And all the things that we depend on, water, electricity, jobs, money, television programs, sports, whatever it is, right? Things that people like can't, driving a car, travel, whatever it might be. And so all those things we are either addicted to or depend on, or both, and, we can't imagine a life without them, so that becomes another problem, right? See, one of the things that I do here, I make it clear to the powers that be that I'm not about a revolution. I'm not about tearing down the system. I'm not about, I'm not an enemy of the system or any of these, people, because that's going to happen naturally. That's out of our hands. We can't, people can rise up collectively and take down a system, but what then, right? So I'm not into any of those things. Revolution, protests, complaints even. I try not to even complain about it because I'm taking the system as being from God. And the system is going to collapse of its own immorality, its own depravity, and what then, right? And so my videos are about what then, what happens next, what happens in a post-apocalyptic world, and how can we prepare ourselves and our loved ones and other people, and mostly ourselves, for what's inevitably going to be a very tough transitional period of the system the way it is now, and then a post-collapse type of situation. So getting back to this stuff with Kanye, I want to cover Kanye a little bit, and this idea of people who have positive energy and they give energy and they contribute something, and then the people who just suck energy from people, right? And it's not based in the person's personality, their beliefs, what they think about, how they approach life. It's about who they are internally as a spirit, as a soul, and whether they're connected to some divine force, and if they're bankrupt of all positive energy, love energy. And, for those people, they're going to have to suck energy from other people, right? And those people are going to be some of them rise up to power in the system, the beast system, and they just drain everything around them. They drain out all the good, all the fun, all the joy out of the people around them in a systemic way. But getting back to Kanye, and why I always think Kanye makes me happy. Kanye lightens my mood. Whenever I come for Kanye, I always have some sort of internal laugh or even a laugh out loud moment. He's funny. His stuff is funny. But also there's, creative genius there. In my first semester in graduate school, there was the core sort of a study of all the various psychological models, right? So this is a master's in counseling program in Santa Fe, New Mexico. So it was, a little bit new agey or progressive or whatever it was. But I think it was a good school, and I learned some things that I, have taken with me. And this first course, the final assignment was creativity and madness. And we all had to do an oral and written presentation. We had to take somebody who was creative, some creative genius, and also see the madness that went with it. And it was very easy to find, right? Because the most creative people are straddling a thin line between creativity and madness, right? Madness is there, the creativity is there, and you can't have the creativity without the madness. Also, with people who are channelers, like this woman, Madame Lynn, who does the Whispers of the Brighter World messages, or did the Whispers of the Brighter World messages, that she channeled for Babaji. And I've said this before, that, in these messages, Babaji says that most of the great creative inventions or artwork or stories, whatever, movies, wherever it is, come from a channeled, opening up to spirit and allowing divine forces and sometimes demonic forces to come through you, right? So human beings aren't necessarily, creative geniuses in themselves. And what Kanye was talking about here was that he gets inspiration through this process, right? Now, he's a Christian. He could be, a number of religious types of people, but you also have to be spiritual. You have to transcend your religion and be spiritual and allow the creative energy and the information to flow through you, right? That's what I do here, right? I watched this clip with Kanye, and there were some questions and things that I read in the comment section, and somebody sent me a personal message, and then I'm like, all right, I got to, this information just flowed through me, and now I got to put it onto this, audio file. And, it is a creative process, right? It is like a flood of information that pours through somebody. So anyways, I took Bobby Fischer, one of my, sort of former friends in the Heartfulness System, was a chess player, and we were, talking quite regularly. And he said, I told him about the assignment, so you got to do Bobby Fischer. Now, there's a movie, I think it's called Pawn Sacrifice, starring the first Spider-Man, Tobey Maguire, as Bobby Fischer. And it's a good movie, but it doesn't give you like an inkling of how like crazy and genius Bobby Fischer was, right? And the venom he had, his creative, on his competitive nature. Like he was cracking guys. There was like guys having mental breakdowns who faced him on the chessboard. They were saying, that he, like the venom and they could feel him wanting to crush them, and the guy, he had these like mental breakdowns. He was kind of a truther in a way, and but he was somebody who brought all these various creative ways of playing chess and thinking about the game of chess that changed that, whatever you want to call it, sport or game or whatever, forever, right? And so there was clear creativity and madness. And, I did my presentation last, and everyone loved my presentation, not because of me, because of, how, like, this Bobby Fischer was the quintessential example. Of course, you think about other artists and, creative people, in this case, even Kanye, where there's genius, there's creative genius, but there's also madness, right? There's like some, creative people are often not normal. They can't fit into the normal mold. They can't behave like other people. And so they're seen as crazy. But once in a while, their genius comes out before they die, because this is another aspect of this. And again, I haven't watched that Elizabeth, whatever her name is, who wrote Eat, Pray, Love, but the word genius stands for like something like, I forget what it was, but it's in the talk. And they would say they had a genius. So the genius was a spirit, right? And the spirit could be a lower developed soul, a demonic soul, but ideally it would be a higher developed soul, right? It would be somebody, who's a being that is working for the divine forces to elevate what's going on here in planet Earth. But when you open yourself up to this, unless you're focused on connecting to the highest and coming with an attitude of service to God, then you're just spinning the wheel of whatever type of disembodied soul that's going to channel through you. So that's, that's the, I guess the dangerous part, and also where the madness can be, you can be brought to a split, fragmented personality type situation and all the rest of that. My wife and I started to watch the Kanye documentary last night, so it's interesting that this came back up. And somebody sent me a clip, but it was an edited clip of Kanye saying he wanted to buy the world. A couple people sent me this clip, but it was a disrespectful clip because they edited it in a way to make Kanye look crazy, right? And so when my wife and I were first getting together, this was, I don't know, back in 2000, I think 17. I was doing some things on Kanye, and I covered him in a negative way in some of my videos. But I ended up like watching his video. It was like sort of a rock opera that he did, and there was a song called "Runaway," and he has this. It's a big table where there's like a bunch of black people eating dinner, and they're dressed in tuxedos, and he starts playing the piano. If you've seen the video, and they have these ballerinas that come out, and like I was watching it, and I started to really like the song. And now it's one of my favorite songs. It's on my iPhone. And, I was like, I think he's a genius. Like, I started watching some of his stuff then. And before I never thought very much of him. But then I realized that every time I saw him, whether he was snatching the mic from Taylor Swift, and, that was a planned part of a ritual. But whatever he was involved with was funny. Like he was, it was light, and he had a good sort of, I don't know, they're good energy, right? And I could say the same thing about Trump. Now, I wouldn't vote for Trump. And Trump is, he has his difficult personality characteristics. And Trump and Jojo Magoo are very similar. And, I like covering Jojo Magoo because of his gaffes, and he's such a screw up. But Trump's energy is a lot better than Jojo's. And Jojo's is a lot better than Hillary Clinton, right? And so, the master of the Heartfulness System, like, has the best energy. When you're around somebody like that, that's what draws people to the system, because of like just a commitment to service and divinity and allowing divinity to flow through. Whether you agree with these people in terms of their policies, and whether you like somebody, in terms of their personality, there's the energy that a person exudes. And when you're around a person who has good energy and they uplift you, you feel it, right? And you can just feel the positive effects of being around a higher developed soul, a saintly person, or even somebody who's just, creative genius that positive energy is passing through. This is what I was trying to allude to in my long journey series video, and how this guy, Mr. S, and my ex, and some of these other people, I referenced, like, Hillary Clinton would be like if she was president, it would just be this gloom. I mean, JoJo at least isn't, like, there isn't this gloom that's coming over the country. But you'll know it when you get a real negative leader and everything else that goes with it, especially when the person's backed full-heartedly by the beastly system. And there'll just be this gloom that comes over the country, just despair, and like joy will be sucked out, and because it'll be a collective consciousness, and all these dark people will sort of run around like like ghouls sucking. I mean, it'll be a bad time, right? And those times are possibly in our near future. So I have a few things I wanted to get to that were comments. One person asked about, wrote me a message, a person who's doing heartfulness, about Babaji's son committing suicide and his other child dying. And then another person said in a comment that the Heartfulness System had sold out. And I wanted to address those two things here. So the first thing is Babaji's son's dying. Now, I only know about the one, and I don't know that much about it, but I know it was suicide. And the reason I know that, buried somewhere in the Saj Marg literature, the Heartfulness literature, I don't know where. If I would, somebody might, but it talks about, or Babaji talks about how he saw that his son had some scars for suicide, that his son was going to commit suicide someday. And he knew the work that needed to be done, the cleaning that would have had to be done to prevent that, right? To minimize it. And so every time he thought about it, every time he would say, all right, I'll have to do that. And he would forget to do it. He never cleaned some scars. And the son died, and, and he confronted Lalaji about it. He said, how come you, because he figured Lalaji was making him forget to clean some scars. And Lalaji said, yeah, because if I allowed you to stop your own son from committing suicide, then how could we console other people? How would it be fair to other people who did heartfulness in the future when their children committed suicide, right? Because they would say, hey, for Babaji, you stopped his child from committing suicide, but why didn't you do that for me? And so this is a clear indication that the masters of the system have to suffer everything that everyone else suffers. And they're not spared. In fact, they suffer more, like I've seen it. But they still endure. They don't get a victim consciousness because that would, prevent the gratitude and the flow of energy. But they suffer. They've all suffered. And, they even suffer more than the average person. And when the second son died, he said, he was rather upset about the first son dying. But when the second son died, he had evolved so much spiritually that his son's soul walked into the room, and Babaji was talking to him. He didn't know he was dead. He just thought it was his son, and then he realized later that that was his disembodied soul. So for him, it wasn't the same as he grew older in terms of his, spiritual abilities, because he could stay connected to the disembodied souls of his loved ones, and so it wasn't like some tragedy or whatever it might be. But Babaji's kids, for the most part, I don't think one of them was good. I know a lot of the older practitioners, the hippies, the boomer hippies from America and from Europe, were upset because Babaji's children were beating their own kids like they were beating his wife. Like it was like, it was like pretty bad there. And it was quite a culture shock. And these children all sued Master Charji and tried to take back these mission properties because they thought they were entitled to inherit the ashram in Shah Jahanpur. And so they plotted against. They were just miserable, not good kids. Like Babaji, apparently his wife like henpecked him, and like he had a maid that him and her were always yelling at each other. Like she was hard of hearing, so Babaji would yell at her, and just so she could hear him, and she would yell back because she was just hard of hearing. And like he said, whenever he yelled, it made him angry, because even though he wasn't really angry, it was the act of yelling made him angry. So it was this whole thing, right? But Babaji liberated this woman, even though she never did one meditation her entire life. Liberation is freedom from your earthly bondage, right? So you don't have to come back here. And all she did was pack his hookah, and he smoked this hookah, and he said nobody ever did it as good as she did. And Sharji heard about this, and Babaji was telling about this this maid being liberated. And Sharji said to him, "You mean I don't have to meditate and do all this work for you? I could just learn to pack your hookah better?" And so there's that. In terms of the Heartfulness System selling out, that won't happen until there's no transmission, right? Once the transmission and the cleaning go away, then heartfulness becomes just like everything else. It's not the cleaning. The cleaning needs a transmission. The transmission helps with the cleaning. And so, until that happens, it's still a live and vibrant system. It's made up of volunteers and human beings who suck. And when they get in power, they're going to do stupid shit like Mr. S, right? Like that's what's happening right now. It's all part of some sort of plan, right? Like everything that happens is part of God's plan, and certainly with the Heartfulness System. And right now, the stuff that's happening isn't hurting the membership so much, if people already do it, like people like me. It's hurting bringing in new people, which is counterproductive because it's about bringing in new people. Like this is the time when it's supposed to be lots of new people starting, and the videos suck so bad, and they're so clueless. And they just, it's, I don't know. I can't, like I said, like deep down, in terms of my personal preferences, I don't care about new people coming. But in terms of my duty and my commitment to the mission, the spiritual mission of the Heartfulness System, it's time for new people to come in, and watching them be incompetent, and not even incompetent, but almost like in terms of the Heartfulness System, the overall scheme of things, it's like criminal. Like it's a crime against heartfulness. It's a crime against the masters of the hierarchy of the spiritual hierarchy of the mission. And so, it's hard to watch, and it just sucks. The UN stuff, they keep on pushing the UN stuff, but they're not really all that connected to the UN. I don't know if there's one time a guy from the UN showed up, and Master Charji clearly was not happy about what he was saying. Like he knew the guy was trying to run his his stuff through. Like you could see, I wish I could find the complete video. They only put a partial video up, and then they deleted it when they realized, I was telling them, hey, don't you see that he's actually kind of bummed here and he's not happy about the UN? And when when I pointed that out, they deleted the video. So the guys in charge of it, instead of owning up to their mistake, they, it's just what it is, right? The advantage that we have being truthers is that we can operate on a higher level of consciousness. It's the same advantage you have, or it's, not as good an advantage, but it's the same sort of advantage you have when you're aligned with God and you're a saintly person, you're a spiritual person. Now, having, a different perspective can change your material decisions, but it doesn't mean it's going to benefit you in your material life, right? Like being a truther, get woke, go broke. It's harder to participate in the system. It's harder to, be a wage slave. It's harder to do everything just for money, right? I mean, it's much easier to believe in what you're doing as a job in terms of economically and, American life if you're not awakened, right? And so, it doesn't necessarily help you in the material life. You're going to be ostracized. People who have the creative gift, have the creative ability, or are saintly, people who bring in inventions, people who are visionaries. I mean, being a visionary is a sucky thing. I have a visionary type of personality. I mean, that's some of the problems I have in the Heartfulness, with the Heartfulness. These guys who run the system, the guys who are in charge of things, they're oftentimes like bean counters, right? The guys who are given administrative positions, and they might be good with money, but they're not, they're not visionary. They don't have a visionary capabilities. And, visionaries are always constrained by the people, the bean counters, the people who are in charge of the money or whatever it might be, right? And, visionaries can go off the rails and do crazy stuff. And so they have to be reined in at some point. There's that as well. But when you become more insightful, you're going to get lonelier and lonelier. As you rise up in your level of consciousness, you're going to see things differently, right? When I stopped drinking when I was in college, and then I went to bars with my friends, and I was like, oh my God, this is so bad, right? Because if you're not drunk, everyone's behaving stupidly, and like you can't have a conversation with a drunk person unless you're making fun of them. Like a sober person has so much in terms of their capacity to do stuff, right? The impairment and the stupidity that a drunk person exhibits. It's easy to play a drunk person because you just act really stupid and you slur your speech and you walk, you walk stagger or whatever it is, right? Because you're impaired. And so that's what it's like being a truth or awakened person. And, it's like being in that movie Idiocracy. So your advantage isn't that somehow you're going to solve all the problems, that you're going to live a better life, you're going to be happier. Your advantage is you raise up to a higher level of consciousness, that you are growing, you're expanding, especially at a spiritual level. Your soul's moving forward, and you're, more aware of everything, because humans have more awareness and consciousness on an intellectual level than, say, animals, right? And so it's your ability to spread your consciousness out there and really see what's going on, and instead of just a limited prejudicial perspective based in yourself and your family and your race and your local whatever it is, right? You're expanding your consciousness to understand people, understand different points of view, and enter into the abstract world of thinking. And so that's the advantage. You move up to a higher level. And that level doesn't mean you're going to be happier. It just means you're on a higher level, right? And it's what's supposed to happen. And the final thing, the last thing I wanted to say, and I wanted to expand on something I said in the other video, and it's going to make more sense in terms of the way I feel about and deal with negative comments, that I don't need your approval. I don't need other people's approval. I would like to have it. I would rather have approval than disapproval, right? But I don't need it. Like, I don't need it from the Heartfulness organization. I mean, this is what came out of like being blackballed or whatever it is, ostracized in the Heartfulness organization wrongfully, because whatever's being said about me, I'm not, anywhere near as bad as they're making me out to be. Not that I'm great or think I'm great or whatever it is, but whatever happened there shouldn't have happened. It was just wrong. I mean, it might have should have happened because of some scars from a past and previous existences, but not anything I did in this life would merit my deserving that. But it liberated me, and also negative comments, which is something everyone here on YouTube has to deal with. It's liberated me because, and I'm going to start saying this when I talk about these comments, I'm not looking for your approval. Like so many people, when they write comments or they talk and they're like, oh, I'm going to disapprove of you, like because they think other people care, and like I don't, right? And sometimes like I like it when they disapprove, right? And then because, I can say to them, hey, nobody cares, right? Like you impotent, limp dick MNF, right? Like, and so, people think they have a power, which is their disapproval. I'm going to unsubscribe. And so it's liberating. Like, I wouldn't want to go through that, what I went through by choice, but there was, a lot of silver linings, and just one of them is not needing approval from other people. Of course, it's nice, and, if I didn't get any positive feedback, then I would say, well, no one likes my videos, and I'd move on to something else, right? So, there's that. Like, I'm making videos that there needs to be some people who are benefiting from them, right? If I was just making videos so people could make fun of me or no one was watching, then I'm just some strange dude talking to myself with a microphone in my hand for an audience that'll never listen or never benefit. So, I mean, that on that level, there's something. But in terms of my, the thumbs up generation, the constantly need to be validated by other people in the outside world, I just don't have it, right? Which I had it before, and now it's gone, and like I don't miss it, right? Like it's freeing and liberating, and I can say things that I know that some section or segment of my audience isn't going to like, and I do that all the time. That's why I'm able to do that. I know there's going to be backlash. I know that they're going to, even if they don't say anything, I'll feel it in some way, but I can say it anyway and not really care about it. And so, I mean, that's a true blessing. Plus, you just, everybody wants approval from society and from, the government or the king or whatever. People have this need to be validated by important people and, all these other things. I just don't have it. If it's there, it's like so infinitesimal I can't feel it, right? And so that's been like a true blessing. And that's, some of the things that came out of my story. That's why I can't say it was, a horrible thing, because good things came out of it, right? I want to talk about COVID. I think I do that on my other channel, but COVID is something that, left me better off, both of them. And now I'm, enjoying good health. I want to talk about that in a, video on my other channel. But anyways, only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely reporting from the Apocalypse and the Ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.